Welcome to Captivating Home. If you love tiny house living and dream of creating a charming garden without breaking the bank, you're in the right place. In today's video, we'll explore how to upcycle vintage finds to craft a budget-friendly cottage garden bursting with personality. Whether you're working with a tiny patio, a small backyard, or even a balcony, these creative ideas will help you design a cozy and inviting outdoor space. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest home and garden inspirations. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you love creative, budget-friendly ideas. Now, let's get started on transforming your tiny outdoor space into a whimsical retreat using vintage treasures and a little bit of DIY magic. One, repurposing old furniture for garden charm. One of the easiest ways to add character to your tiny house garden is by repurposing old furniture. That forgotten wooden chair, vintage dresser, or even a rusty metal table can be transformed into a unique planter or decorative garden feature. A weathered dresser with missing drawers, for example, can be repainted and turned into a vertical garden by filling the open spaces with colorful flowers or fresh herbs. If you stumble upon an old wooden ladder at a thrift store or flea market, don't let it go to waste. A coat of paint, or some light distressing can turn it into a charming tiered plant stand. Simply place potted plants on each rung, creating a beautiful cascading effect that saves space while adding visual interest. The beauty of upcycling old furniture is that it brings instant vintage charm to your tiny garden at little to no cost. 2. Creative planters, breathing new life into vintage finds. When designing a cottage-style garden on a budget, think outside the traditional planter box. Vintage suitcases, enamel teapots, tin buckets, and even old bathtubs can become eye-catching plant containers. These unique planters not only give new purpose to forgotten items, but also create an enchanting, storybook-like atmosphere in your tiny outdoor space. The more character your vintage finds have, the more charm they bring to your garden. One creative idea is to use an antique birdcage as a hanging planter. Fill it with cascading greenery like ivy or small flowering plants for a dreamy, whimsical effect. Similarly, Old wooden crates stacked at different heights can serve as rustic planters or even a DIY garden shelf. By embracing these upcycled treasures, you're adding a layer of nostalgia and personality to your garden while keeping costs low. Three, DIY garden pathways with salvaged materials. A well-designed garden path instantly enhances the cottage feel of your tiny outdoor space. Instead of buying expensive paving stones, consider using salvaged materials like broken bricks, old wood planks, or mismatched tiles to create a one-of-a-kind pathway. Laying these materials in a creative pattern not only adds character but also gives your garden a welcoming, time-worn charm that fits perfectly with the vintage aesthetic. If you come across old stepping stones or even large, flat pieces of slate, use them to design a meandering garden path. Scatter small pebbles or moss between the stones for a natural, enchanted cottage look. Repurposing materials in this way not only saves money but also reduces waste, making your tiny house garden both budget-friendly and environmentally sustainable. Four, vintage decor, adding cozy cottage accents. To complete your tiny garden's charming ambience, vintage decor elements are a must. Think weathered metal watering cans, antique mirrors, or repurposed window frames that create an inviting, lived-in feel. Hanging a vintage mirror on a garden wall or fence can make a small space appear larger, while old picture frames can be transformed into decorative trellises for climbing plants like roses or jasmine. Lanterns, fairy lights, and repurposed chandeliers add a magical touch to any tiny garden, especially in the evening. Try hanging an old metal chandelier from a tree and filling it with solar-powered candles for a romantic, rustic glow. Whether you find treasures at thrift stores, flea markets, or even in your attic, these small vintage accents will bring warmth and charm to your tiny house garden without exceeding your budget. Five, upcycled trellises and vertical gardening solutions. When space is limited in a tiny house garden, vertical gardening is a must. Instead of purchasing costly trellises, consider upcycling old items like metal bed frames, wooden pallets, or discarded wire fencing. A rusty iron headboard, for example, can serve as a charming vintage trellis for climbing plants like morning glories or sweet peas, adding both beauty and function to your outdoor space. Wooden pallets, often available for free at warehouses or markets, can be repurposed into an easy DIY vertical planter. Simply stand the pallet upright, attach small pots, and fill them with flowers, herbs, or even strawberries. This not only saves valuable ground space but also enhances the cottage garden look with a rustic, handmade touch. With upcycled trellises and vertical planters, even the smallest gardens can flourish. Six. Rustic garden edging with repurposed materials. Defining garden beds with charming, vintage-inspired edging can elevate the overall look of your tiny house garden. Instead of buying pre-made borders, use upcycled materials like old bricks, reclaimed wood, or even antique plates to create a unique, budget-friendly edge. Lining your garden path with stacked bricks or weathered wood adds a cozy, aged appeal that perfectly complements a cottage-style garden. For a truly whimsical touch, consider using mismatched vintage plates or teacups as garden edging. Partially bury them in the soil to create a decorative, storybook-like border around flower beds or pathways. Not only is this a creative way to repurpose old dishes, but it also adds a playful and colorful accent to your outdoor space. The more eclectic the collection, the more charming the result. Seven. Salvaged wood and DIY garden structures. A tiny garden can feel even more inviting with small, handcrafted structures made from salvaged wood. An old wooden door, for example, can be repurposed into a quaint garden gate, instantly adding character to your outdoor space. Similarly, discarded wooden shutters can be transformed into a decorative screen or backdrop for climbing roses, bringing vintage charm and functionality to your garden. If you have access to reclaimed barn wood or shipping crates, use them to build rustic garden furniture like benches or plant shelves. A simple wooden crate can serve as a stylish potting station, while a few repurposed planks can become a cozy garden swing. These handmade structures add a sense of warmth and nostalgia, making your tiny house garden feel like a true countryside retreat. Eight. Water features with vintage flair. A water feature brings tranquility to any garden, and with a bit of creativity, you can craft one using upcycled materials. An old clawfoot bathtub, a vintage wash basin, or even a rusty metal bucket can be converted into a charming mini pond or fountain. Adding floating water lilies or small aquatic plants enhances the fairy tale cottage aesthetic, while a simple solar-powered pump keeps the water flowing. If space is tight, consider making a tabletop water fountain using an antique teapot or ceramic jug. Placing a small pump inside and allowing water to trickle down into a stone-filled basin creates a relaxing sound, perfect for a tiny garden sanctuary. Not only do these upcycled water features add elegance, but they also attract birds and pollinators, making your garden a peaceful and lively retreat. Nine. Vintage containers for a charming herb garden. Growing your own herbs is a fantastic way to add greenery and fragrance to your tiny house garden while keeping it functional. Instead of standard plant pots, repurpose vintage containers like tin canisters, enamel mugs, or wooden drawers. Arranging them on a rustic shelf or hanging them on a repurposed ladder adds a delightful farmhouse feel, making your herb garden both practical and picturesque. Old kitchenware like colanders or cast iron skillets can also serve as unique herb planters. Their built-in drainage holes make them perfect for growing basil, thyme, or rosemary. Placing them near your kitchen door ensures fresh herbs are always within reach, blending convenience with cottage charm. By using vintage containers, your herb garden becomes a beautiful, budget-friendly feature that adds life and fragrance to your outdoor space. Ten. Upcycled lighting ideas for a cozy glow. Soft lighting transforms a tiny garden into an enchanting retreat, and upcycled lighting ideas can enhance this effect while staying budget-friendly. Mason jars, vintage lanterns, or even old glass bottles can be repurposed into charming garden lights. Filling jars with fairy lights or inserting solar-powered candles inside lanterns creates a warm, inviting atmosphere for cozy evenings outdoors. For a whimsical touch, repurpose an old metal chandelier into a garden lighting fixture. Simply remove the wiring, paint it in a distressed finish, and replace the candle holders with small solar lights. Hanging it from a tree or pergola adds a magical ambience, perfect for relaxing nights under the stars. With a little creativity, upcycled lighting can bring a dreamy, vintage glow to your tiny house garden. (11) Vintage window frames for garden decor and functionality. Old window frames can add a whimsical, vintage touch to your tiny house garden while serving multiple functions. Whether you find a weathered window at a flea market or salvage one from an old building, these rustic pieces can be repurposed into decorative garden accents. Hanging a window frame against a fence or wall creates a charming backdrop for climbing plants like ivy, roses, or sweet peas, adding an illusion of depth and openness. If you're looking for a more functional use, turn an old window frame into a mini greenhouse or cold frame. By attaching it to a wooden box, you create a protective space for seedlings during colder months. This not only extends your growing season but also adds a rustic charm to your garden setup. Upcycling window frames is a simple way to incorporate vintage beauty while making the most of a small outdoor space. (12) DIY birdhouses and feeders with a vintage twist. Inviting birds into your tiny house garden adds life, sound, and movement, creating a peaceful, cottage-like atmosphere. Instead of purchasing a birdhouse, why not make one using repurposed materials? An old teapot, wooden cigar box, or even a vintage milk jug can be transformed into a cozy birdhouse with just a little modification. Hanging these unique birdhouses on tree branches or garden walls gives your space a touch of whimsy. For a budget-friendly bird feeder, repurpose an antique saucer and teacup. Simply attach the teacup to the saucer with strong glue, fill it with birdseed, and place it on a post or hang it from a tree. This charming addition not only attracts birds but also brings a delicate, vintage elegance to your outdoor sanctuary. Encouraging wildlife in your garden enhances its magic while staying true to the cozy cottage aesthetic. (13) Salvaged doors and gates for cottage charm. Incorporating salvaged doors or gates into your tiny house garden instantly adds a sense of history and rustic charm. An old wooden door, with its faded paint and vintage hardware, can be repurposed as a garden divider, creating the illusion of separate outdoor rooms. Leaning a repurposed door against the wall and decorating it with hanging planters or fairy lights gives your garden an enchanting, storybook feel. An antique wrought iron gate, even if it's rusted, can serve as a beautiful garden trellis or entryway. Whether used as a decorative feature or as a functional support for climbing plants, a salvaged gate brings instant character to your tiny garden. Adding these architectural elements makes your space feel like a hidden secret garden, filled with charm and nostalgia. (14) Repurpose fabric and linens for cozy outdoor touches. Adding soft, vintage textiles to your tiny house garden makes it feel warm and inviting. Instead of buying new outdoor cushions, look for old floral tablecloths, lace curtains, or vintage quilts at thrift stores. These can be upcycled into cushion covers, outdoor throws, or even DIY garden shade canopies. A soft, draped canopy made from vintage linen can transform a small patio into a dreamy cottage retreat. Repurposed fabric can also be used to create bunting flags, adding a cheerful touch to your outdoor space. Sewing together strips of old fabric or handkerchiefs creates a beautiful, homemade garland that complements the cottage aesthetic. Hanging these flags between trees, across a fence, or along a pergola brings a nostalgic, festival-like charm to your garden, making it a perfect space for relaxation. (15) Vintage kitchenware as whimsical garden accents. Old kitchenware has endless possibilities when it comes to upcycling for a cottage-style garden. Vintage baking tins, flour sifters, and enamel bowls can be transformed into quirky planters, adding a playful, rustic touch to your space. Hanging old colanders as wall planters or using a cast iron skillet as a succulent dish gives new life to forgotten kitchen treasures while enhancing your garden's personality. A charming idea is to repurpose an antique wooden rolling pin or metal ladle as a garden sign. Simply paint or stencil plant names onto them and place them in your herb or vegetable garden for a unique, functional decoration. By integrating vintage kitchenware into your garden, you celebrate both nostalgia and creativity while making your tiny outdoor space feel like a cozy, lived-in sanctuary. Conclusion: creating a tiny garden full of charm on a budget. Cottage charm isn't about how much money you spend, it's about the love and creativity you put into your space. By upcycling vintage finds, you can craft a tiny house garden that feels warm, inviting, and rich with character. Whether you're using old furniture, salvaged wood, or antique kitchenware, every repurposed item tells a story and adds a unique touch to your garden. I hope this video has inspired you to start your own upcycled garden project. Let me know in the comments which idea was your favorite, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss more creative home and garden ideas. See you in the next video.